Good morning. Happy Friday, July 3rd. I hope we're going here because I'm not seeing things. It looks like I'm rolling. So today we are going to discuss magical masonry. And why not? Anyway, yes, I'm a proud member of Long Beach Lodge uh, number 327, where I've served as chaplain, and several times, and I've also served as junior deacon. And I'm also a member of the Long Beach Scottish Rite Bodies, both of which my father belonged to. So uh, I've been privileged to write two introductions or forewords or one introduction and to Mark Stavish's wonderful Freemasonry rituals, symbols, and history of a secret society. Uh, and that's his 2007 edition. And I've also was privileged to give the opening lecture at the opening night performance of the Los Angeles Opera presentation of Mozart's Magic Flute. I I did the opening lecture. If you've ever gone to a big symphony of some kind, sometimes before the performance, there's a lecture, and I'll read that tomorrow. But today I'm going to read my foreword to Mark Stavish's book. But anyway, the whole section of Allow Me to Introduce, I've called Magical Masonry. And the little opening title page thing, I usually do a paragraph or two. My father, Clifford Ernest DuQuette, was perhaps the most honest and noble human being I've ever known. He was not at all interested in magic and wasn't a religious person per se, but he was defined by an almost mystical standard of moral integrity. He was a good man, and he was good for goodness sake, not because of any particular religious doctrine or belief, but rather he was good because he knew in his heart that being good was the natural and human way to live. He joined the Masons in 1948, the year I was born. And I believe that Masonry was the cornerstone of his character. Once again, the book is Freemasonry, Ritual, Symbols, and History of the Secret Society by Mark Stavish. Destiny Books, 2010. My epigram is right out of the Fellowcraft degree of the California Free and Accepted Masons. Masonry is a progressive moral science, divided into different degrees, and as its principles and mystic ceremonies are regularly developed and illustrated, it is intended and hoped that they will make a deep and lasting impression upon your mind. It's 4 a.m. I creep quietly past the rooms of my sleeping brothers and out to the darkened hallway that leads to the staircase to the atrium. The atrium is a cavernous space nearly 200 feet long and over 50 feet wide, built in the style of the Roman Empire. The marble floor is adorned with Masonic symbols inlaid in brass and stone of contrasting colors. The Doric and Ionic columns that flank the great hall and support the second-story walkway and chambers are dwarfed by towering Corinthian columns that buttress the vaulted ceiling 3 stories high, whose centerpiece, stained glass skylight, now bathes the room in soft, iridescent moonlight. There are 5 statues here whose bronze presences I move to honor. 4 are the goddess figures of the cardinal virtues: temperance, prudence, fortitude, and justice. They are positioned at the corners of the room, which I slowly circumambulate as I move from pedestal to pedestal. The 5th goddess stands in the very center of the hall and bears no inscription or emblem. She simply holds her forefinger to her lips as if to hush the universe. It is here at the feet of silence I sit down on the cool floor and close my eyes. Only a moment, it seems, passes before I hear the warm ring of a temple bell. The others are awake, and we're being called to dawn meditation. I slip off my shoes outside the door of the lodge room and tiptoe inside and take my seat. The room is dark, save for a single candle on the central altar. After a few quiet words of introduction and instruction, we close our eyes and enter our inner temples. 40 minutes later, the sun has risen. We open our eyes and see the room brilliantly illuminated by 3 large Italian stained glass panels that we now see form the entire southern wall of the lodge room. Each window dramatically depicts one of the 3 ages of man: youth, manhood, and old age. My eyes linger on each scene in turn as I weigh the well-lived episodes of my life against those of time misspent. After breakfast, we gather beneath the chandeliers of Czechoslovakian silver in the spacious reception room, and for the first time see who has come this year. I immediately recognize some of the brightest stars in the firmament of modern masonry. I also see friends and colleagues from years past, writers, scholars, teachers, and students. As always, there are several brothers who have been invited for the first time to present papers and lecture. We are met for 3 days of presentations and discussions of issues and subjects relating to esoteric aspects of the craft of Freemasonry. We have gathered secretly and informally, under no official warrant, charter, or auspices, to explore the craft as a self-transformational art and science. Gathered to labor and strategize how best to proceed to protect, preserve, and advance the esoteric soul of Freemasonry. Appropriately, the venue for this gathering is one of the largest and most architecturally magnificent Masonic edifices in the world, unexplainably abandoned by its usual team of custodial stewards for the duration of our meeting. The building itself is intoxicating. We are all humbled by its beauty and perfection and perfect proportions. One cannot resist being tangibly elevated as we intuitively attempt to adjust our inner imperfections to reflect the outer perfections of the sacred geometry all around us. As we walk the sacred labyrinth, or sit quietly studying in the Gothic library, or muse about alchemy at the feet of Assyrian sphinxes, we find ourselves pausing and asking each other, is this really happening? Yes, it really happens. And this is how I always dreamed Masonry would be. This, however, is not what all Masons think the craft should be. As a matter of fact, there are a great many who now feel the esoteric roots of our ancient institution are an embarrassment. Queer and unwholesome links to paganism, the occult, and perhaps even Satanism. You might be surprised to learn that there is a concerted effort now taking place within Masonry to once and for all divorce the craft from its esoteric heritage and make it an organization open only to men professing certain specific religious convictions. Even though Masonry traditionally dictates that a candidate need only profess a belief in a supreme being and a form of afterlife, today there are jurisdictions and lodges around the world that will not consider the application of a man if they believe his religion not to be mainstream enough or his interest in the esoteric nature of the craft suspiciously intense. This is why, sadly, I cannot tell you the name in what country our gathering takes place. Neither can I tell you the names of the participants or the circumstances that bring us together or the details of our activities and goals. By necessity, Masonry has, for us again, become a secret society. What makes this anti-esoteric movement so ill-timed and suicidal is the fact that Masonry's membership numbers are plunging precipitously. Lodges are closing or merging with other lodges for lack of members. Freemasonry, as we've known it for the last 300 years, will be dead in just a few years if something isn't done. Ironically, and much to the terror of the anti-esotericists, the only demographic group that is applying for membership in significant numbers is composed of young men who are passionately interested in the esoteric mysteries of the craft. And now I must say, young women. Fortunately, at least for the time being, esoteric Masonry is fortunately for at least the time being, exoteric Masonry is still for the most part a big tent. Even in the most conservative quarters, leadership still pays lip service to the concept that Masonry opens her doors to upstanding men of all races, religions, political persuasions, and social and economic circumstances. Aside from the obligatory duties required to advance through the degrees, the individual Mason is free to be as interested or as disinterested as he likes in matters that concern the history, rituals, traditions, and mysteries of the craft. As it is, and much to the relief of anti-esotericists, most Masons, once they are raised to the sublime degree of Master Mason, and if they so choose go on to complete the degrees of one or more concordant bodies, they're pleased that they're happy to put the quaint and curious stuff behind them and simply enjoy being part of one of the most active and generous service organizations in the world. This is as it should be. And please don't think that I'm denigrating the contributions and efforts of a brother who wishes to participate on any level. The world needs generous service organizations to sponsor hospitals and clinics and scholarships. Some men need a relatively wholesome place to meet socially once or twice a month, and other relatively other wholesome men. Add to this the possibility that some men might actually have a psychological need to put on clown makeup and drive tiny cars in parades. Without men like this, Masonry would not be, for the time being at least, the largest and wealthiest fraternity in the world. These are good men who are made better by their involvement in the craft. But there are also those among them who would like to be spiritually transformed by Masonry's deeper secrets. And currently, these are the only men applying in any significant numbers. Still, I'd wager that even some of the clowns in the tiny cars, if properly educated, might be fascinated by the esoteric side of things. The sad fact is most Masons are never adequately exposed to knowledgeable brothers or materials that might excite their curiosity beyond wondering what's for stated meeting dinner. It's not that the information is not available. Plenty of fine books have been written over the centuries, some of which might be found in the library of local lodges around the world. But many of these books were written in the 1800s, at a time when interest in esoteric Masonry was at its zenith, and when even a high school diploma meant a familiarity with Greek and Latin and a smattering of philosophy, world religions, and history. Anyone who's even started to read Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma will know exactly what I'm talking about. What has been lacking for the modern Mason, and what Brother Stavish now mercifully presents us, is a straightforward and step-by-step study of Freemasonry and the myriad movements and ideas that gave birth to the craft in all of its manifestations. Moreover, as he sets it all vis-a-vis the 21st century science, philosophy, and mysticism, and challenges the reader to do the same. The Path of Freemasonry, that's the name of the book, is a one-volume liberal arts education in Freemasonry, and never before in the history of the craft has it been more important for individual Masons to be so educated. I wish I could put Brother Stavish's book in the hands of every newly raised brother, not simply for his own benefit, but for the benefit of those individuals throughout his life who will look to him as a worthy example of a knowledgeable and enlightened member of the fraternity. And I end my introduction with a Master's closing prayer. May the blessings of heaven rest upon us and all regular Freemasons. May brotherly love prevail and every moral and social virtue cement us. Amen. Okay, well, have a good day and start your 4th of July weekend. Tomorrow, on the 4th of July, I will read my opening remarks to the LA Opera's premiere performance of Mozart's Magic Flute. Until then, continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.